anymore.
I am Anitra Steele, chair of the LWVKC Forums Committee. Good evening and welcome to our forum for House Districts 19, 22, 23, and 24 for the November 5th election, all Jackson County districts. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties. This forum is recorded and will be available on the League's webpage, lwvkc.org, and on YouTube. The League of Women Voters is a grassroots, nonpartisan organization whose members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we neither endorse nor oppose candidates or political parties, we are directly involved with the sharing of important issues. Our mission is to empower voters and defend our democracy. We envision a democracy where every citizen has the knowledge, the right, the desire, and the confidence to participate. Our membership is open to everyone. I'd like for you to know the other League members volunteering with me. Stephanie Revels is our timekeeper, and our Zoom is monitored by Janelle Shue. The public has sent in the questions via the League's website, lwvkc.org. Tonight, we welcome our moderator, Dr. Carmelita Williams, CEO of the Black Archives of Mid-America. Welcome. Proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to join you for the Candidates Forum for House Districts 19, 22, 23, and 24. All of them are in Kansas City. Tonight, we'll hear from the candidates running for the opportunity to represent their district voters in Jackson County. The Missouri State Representatives and Senators work alongside the governor to create laws and establish a state budget. Responsibilities include passing bills on public policy matters, setting levels for state spending, raising and lowering taxes, and voting to uphold or override gubernatorial vetoes. State representatives are limited to 4 2-year terms. State senators are limited to 2 4-year terms. Forums last approximately 90 minutes. I'll ask each candidate the same question, selected from those submitted by the public. The order of candidate responses has been determined by random rotation. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to respond to each question and 2 minutes for a closing argument. All of the candidates running for these districts have been invited. We welcome the candidates participating in tonight's forum. Candidates, please answer the question asked and stick to the topic. There will be no rebuttals, but you may go back to an issue during your 2-minute closing remarks. Let us begin. Karen Spalding, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Karen Spalding. I've been in education for over 35 years, and I had life education before that of raising 4 children. And I basically have come to the political forum because I want to make sure that my grandchildren and my children are taken care of in the future. And I want to be part of that, as well as help the constituents in District 19.
Thank you. Wick Thomas, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Wick Thomas. I am a resident of Scarrett Renaissance in District 19. I am currently a librarian faculty member at MCC Penn Valley. Prior to that, I was the manager of teen programs at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. And before that, the teen librarian at the Kansas City Public Library. So I've dedicated most of my career in life to advocating for teenagers and education. I have a Bachelor in Arts from UMKC in Communications, a Master's in Library Science from Emporia State University, and I'm currently working on my PhD in Instructional Design Technology at Emporia State. So I'm an active member of the community. I attend almost every neighborhood organization in the district. I do weekly parks cleanups, and a big part of our campaign has been being active in the community, has been volunteering for service agencies, again, our weekly parks cleanups. And as part of the campaign, we distributed native seeds while knocking doors, over 2,000 different native seeds to doors. We also, as a librarian, right, bans affect me a lot right now. And we have, the campaign has been going to the districts hit hardest with the book bans, and we've been buying those books, their discarded materials from government auctions, and we've been redistributing them out to the community. And so we are trying to really focus in on what matters to District 19, and thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate being here.
Yolanda Young, please introduce yourself.
Yes, well, good evening to everyone. My name is Yolanda Young, and I am in my 5th year serving as representative for District 22. I am running to continue the type of advocacy that I've done in my community for, yes, over 30 years. I started working with and alongside individuals and groups to combat high crime rates, blight, food insecurity, to name a few. First as a volunteer, then as an employee of a nonprofit, and then as a co-owner of 2 small family businesses. And really the goal is just to access resources and support those who are historically overlooked, underrepresented, and often underserved. I'm one of many seasoned adults or older adults who received a degree in my older age, although I initially started taking college courses right after high school. However, it's the work on the ground with my community and with the urban neighborhoods, with the children and their families, with seniors, with community organizations, coupled with my humble beginnings in Northeast Texas, small town, actually called Nash, right at the Texarkana border. Those spaces and places have been my greatest teacher. And it's, thank you.
Michael Johnson, please introduce yourself.
Hello, good evening. I'm Michael Johnson. I am a candidate for House District 23 because I love House District 23. Anytime that I've had the pleasure of staying within Kansas City, I've only spent my time and tenure within that district. I'm very passionate about it. The work that I do, be it through community service, be it through my small business insurance company that I own, but it's to give back and to be resourceful in finding resources for our unserved and underserved communities. In my district, I have what I would call the richest, poorest district that I serve and love to serve. So you can have the projects, and then you also have Beacon Hill. You have over 50 different ethnicities as far as languages and as far as trying to bridge those gaps. So things such as broadband are very dear to me. Mental health plagues Kansas City in a variety of demographics. So that too is dear to me. Things that most people overlook when you're dealing with the unserved and unserved communities are the things that I'm attached to. Those are the things that I think we have to depend on to be able to work and figure out exactly where our problems lie throughout our community. And so from being a veteran, running my own business, coming from an HBCU in Little Rock, Arkansas, Philander Smith College, it's within me, even from SGA, in my time spent in college, to being able to give back and always know that you have to give back and you need to do it with love. And that's why I do what I do and want to continue that work.
Dr. Claudia Tuman, please introduce yourself.
I am Claudia Toomim. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to reach the constituents of Missouri Representative District 24. And thank you to the residents of the district for accessing this forum. My role model for the behavior of government officials is the late C. Everett Koop. Dr. Koop was a highly skilled surgeon and indeed one of the founders of the field of pediatric surgery. And please forgive the pun, no small matter. He also had an exceptionally strong religious training. He was chosen by President Reagan as Surgeon General, and unlike me, he opposed abortion. But he was not a neurobiologist and did not view life with a neurobiologist's understanding. However, as Surgeon General, he was faced with making decisions about the treatments of 2 children born with extremely severe birth defects. His decision surprised us all. He chose not to pursue extreme measures to extend their lives. Upon retirement in 1989, he explained his decision in this manner. He said, "When I was a pediatric surgeon, I was the physician for baby Doe and baby Jane Doe. But when I became Surgeon General, I became the physician for not just the babies, but also for their siblings, parents, grandparents, neighbors, and the entire community. To the residents of District 24, if you entrust me with your vote, I will do my level best, like Dr. Koop, to represent all of you and do what is best for the greater good."
Emily Weber, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I'm Emily Weber, and I'm the state representative for District 24, which is the Midtown downtown area of KC. I'm finishing up my 2nd term and running for my 3rd. Very quickly about me, I'm adopted from South Korea and was raised in rural Kansas. I grew up as a 4-H'er, and my dad owned his own small business, Weber Surge Dairy Equipment. I used to joke that I was the only urban rep who can milk a cow by hand, but actually there are a lot of us. I got my associates from Butler County Community College that prepared me for Kansas City Art Institute, where I got my bachelor's in fine arts as a graphic designer. I worked for various companies in marketing and communications as a graphic designer, and then I got into politics because the day after the 2016 election, I was told to go back to where I came from, China Doll, in the parking lot at a grocery store. I realized voting wasn't enough and started volunteering time to candidates that aligned with me. I ran for office because I've lived paycheck to paycheck. I've been without healthcare. I've used Planned Parenthood for general women's healthcare because I had no healthcare. I have worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, and I'm actually still working multiple jobs. I've been paid less than a man for the same position. And at the end of the day, I'm a minority woman in the state of Missouri. I grew up in a small town, and I understand the issues facing both our cities and our rural folks. Since I've been in Jeff City, I've worked across party lines and built relationships with people I don't see eye to eye with.
Thank you. So now that we've had full name introductions, we will be a little bit more casual, and I will refer to you by your first names. And thank you for allowing me that privilege. So the question is, would you support a gas tax? Since our current tax is among the lowest in the country and our roads and bridges are in disrepair. Wick, would you please respond?
Can I ask more about what type of gas tax? Like how
All I can do
much?
is ask the question.
Okay. So I very much think that we need to be funding our roads. I think our infrastructure is incredibly bad in Missouri. I think that anyone who's driven throughout the country would agree with that comparatively. So it's something that I would like to have more information on, the specifics of, but I think anything to improve the infrastructure, the roads and bridges in our state would be lovely.
Okay, Michael, will you respond?
Yes, I would oppose a gas tax at this point, and I would most definitely focus on our infrastructure, which is in dire need of being reconnected with the rest of the world as far as just rebuilding and remaintenancing a lot of our freeways and highways and byways. I would do that first and foremost because where we sit being in the middle of the map, I think that it's very imperative and important that we make sure that we have access to the tri-state area as well as our own areas.
Karen, your response?
I would say no about the gas tax just because I really feel like that at this place in our economy, that it's the poor and the socially, economically low people that the gas tax might really hurt. As far as the roads, of course, I agree with everybody on that, that we need to make sure that our roads are kept and the infrastructure is good, but I would like to find a different way to finance that as than putting the tax on the gasoline.
Okay, Claudia?
This is a complex issue. I have heard in the past, but it's been a while, that the money for roads and bridges for transportation gets robbed and spent on other things. And I don't know what those other things are, and I don't know that that's still true. We certainly need to deal with that issue, particularly in the rural regions. I've been on those rural roads after a heavy rain, and sometimes you just have no idea whether you're going to be able to get through or not. And I have a tall truck, an F-150, so I can go through the dips in the roads where there's a lot of water much more easily than people who have small cars. But it's still a concern. Also, those roads are oftentimes not paved and only one lane wide. So, there two people you can't pass. You've got to like back up to an intersection or something in order to get through. So it's very concerning to me. Also, we keep increasing the population of the country. 100 million in the last 30 years, in the last 34 years, over 100 million. And what that means is that we keep having to add to our roads. Okay, I'll stop there.
Yolanda?
Yes, hi. I would have to say no on supporting a gas tax. There's an existing tax already. First of all, I just don't think we need any new taxes. I think most Missourians feel taxed out, just to put it quite simply. And I mean, there's no doubt and no question that Missouri's infrastructure is struggling and one of the poorest and to some degree in the country, our roads and bridges. But I don't think a gas tax is going to actually address the issue. I think it might create some unintended consequences for people.
Okay, the next question is a little bit lengthier, so relax. Missouri is one of 26 states which allow citizens to amend the Constitution by an initiative petition. Currently, an initiative petition will pass with a simple majority vote after a sufficient number of supporting signatures have been gathered. Efforts in the legislature to raise the threshold fell short this year. Would you support making it more difficult to change the Constitution through our existing petition process? Why or why not? Michael.
We want to keep it, even though it came up short, we want to keep it exactly where it is. We think that it needs to be fair across the board, and the way that the initial petition is set up to work is by way of majority. And I don't think that you need to spread out where you get that those signatures from. I don't think that it's practical and common to try to discourage people from getting signatures where needed, especially when they can gain a lot of those signatures, if not all of them, in one area or another demographically. And so it discourages me some of the plots and the ways that things can be laid out, because of the simple fact that everybody, if we're talking about a democracy here, then we need to make sure that we have exactly that. And when it's dealing with the Constitution, we do want it to be difficult for people to amend the Constitution, but not by way of initial petition, by way of changing that in that manner.
Claudia,
Me?
yes,
Okay.
Claudia.
Yes, thank you. I have several ideas on this. First of all, I think that adding more petitions is not necessary. But the initiative petition, the right now, what we put on the ballot is a summary. And many people don't go and read the whole thing. And that's why we have a constitutional republic, which is representative democracy rather than a straight democracy. It's because if you have something that is lengthy, if you need something that is lengthy, then you have people who are taking all of their time to deal with that, and they are responsible for doing it, what the average citizen really doesn't have time to do. And so what you find when you look at the entire thing is, in one case, we have one that I think is 8 pages long. So nobody reads it. Now, there's always, when something's that long, there's always something in there you're going to disagree with. And once we put it in the Constitution, it's also harder to get out. And so, and we found that with the medical cannabis, that there were a lot of things in it that we wish were not there, because it was, okay. 30 days.
Emily, your response, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I don't support making it harder for voters to have their votes heard. We see attacks on this initial petition from the Republican supermajority every session. The General Assembly should be working for the voters, but each year we see fewer and fewer bills being passed that help Missourians. The initial petition is a way for voters to have their voices heard. This is how we defeated right to work multiple times. Expanded Medicaid, legalized medical and recreational marijuana, and this is gonna be how we get our reproductive health care rights back. The Republican supermajority has already said Amendment 3 is going to pass, and they are prepared to file as many bills to go against the will of the voters once again. We need to ensure that we are electing people that protect our initiative petition.
Yolanda, please.
Yes. Well, I agree a lot of what Representative Weber said and Representative Johnson. I wouldn't support the majority party's effort to raise the threshold either for this petition. It is the citizens' pathway to bring their voices into the legislative process. After all, it's been around for a century or more, a little over a century, and it has worked. And it has benefited both parties, Democrat and Republicans, over time. Politicians just need to respect this. And I think give up this appetite to, and I believe it's, the appetite to rule, to control, to reign, and to dictate from Jefferson City. Again, I would not support the effort to make it more difficult. We should be making things easier for people to bring their voice into the legislative process.
Karen? Oh, no, yes.
Thank you very much. I was thinking about what everyone has said, and what I would say differently. I am not necessarily for making it harder, but I do see that many times when you are putting on changes in the Constitution, that it is from certain areas, and instead of representing the whole state. And like Claudia said, I think that these laws should be coming out of Jefferson City to represent the state as a whole and not just certain populated areas. So I wouldn't change anything either, but I do understand why it was put there, because it's questionable whether it's really representing what the people think across the state and not just in the populated areas.
And Wick.
Yeah, no, so I absolutely do not think it should be harder. The initiative petition process should not be harder. A lot of the best things that have happened for Missouri have been through that process. And this idea that the citizens should not have a say in the laws coming out, that it should all be dictated from Jefferson City, is just a really bizarre idea to me. The initiative petition process is already incredibly difficult. Takes a lot of signatures and a lot of time. And the idea that that amount of people working that hard should not be allowed to do that, should not be allowed to be in the process is again just something that, why would we make it harder to get involved in our democracy? We should not be making it harder for citizens to get involved. And then in addition to that work that it takes to even get it on the ballot, it then goes to a vote. And so it is not just certain areas that are creating this. It is a statewide vote that will be voting to approve or reject these petitions. So no, it absolutely should not be more difficult.
Okay, and I've learned that I skipped Emily on the gas tax question. Would you like to respond now?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, I can. We passed a gas tax already a few sessions ago. So that has been passed, and I do not hear of, I have not heard of anybody or any rumors about another gas tax being passed at this moment. So it's one of those, I would have to say that, the information came before me. I'd have to look at what that information would be before I would say yes or no.
Okay, the next question. In 1992, riverboat gambling was approved by Missouri voters partly because tax monies would go to support schools. We now know it is instead of state funds rather than in addition to state funds. Amendment 2, which will be on the November ballot, asks voters to support sports betting, with the taxes generated going to support education, including primary, secondary, and higher education. Will these taxes be used the same way or be in addition to support from the general fund? Emily, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So, sports betting has been an issue that I hear not only from my constituents, but Missourians across the state, that this is what they want. But again, the Republican supermajority every session will hold this piece of legislation hostage. So we know people are crossing state line, they're going to Kansas, they're going to Illinois to place a bet and then coming right back home. The way that this amendment is written, it's not guaranteed that our education system will actually see increased revenue. We know we do not fund our teachers or our schools properly. And when it comes to language, this is kind of what you would call ballot candy. We will see how the voters respond to this amendment come November 5th. And, if the Republican supermajority would just get their act together and pass a clean bill with the General Assembly, we would not be here right now.
Yolanda.
Yes, I do agree with a lot of what Emily said. I think the question here would be, do the voters want to legalize sports betting? The part about education, I do think is as mentioned, ballot candy, a sweetener, if you will, that's been attached to the amendment to make it more palatable. I just like voters to recognize that the potential revenues are not even defined. And what I read is that the amount could be anywhere from $0 to $28 million. So packaging this as a consistent funding source could be quite deceptive. So, and I have constituents who say they are not willing to take this risk in terms of education, but that the legislator just needs to fully fund public education with no strings attached.
And Wick.
Yeah, echoing that, I definitely think it's up to the voters at this point. And so my goal on it would be, if I am able to do that, is to make it in addition to making this money in addition to the current state money. going to education. Because I think like you've said, we've seen this in the past where things that said they were going to education is misleading because it's just removing the state funding for that particular amount. If this were in addition to, then it would actually be improving the quality of education in Missouri rather than reducing the state's commitment to education. And we really need some commitment to education. We're the 50th in teacher pay, even with a recent pay raise. And we are currently trying to criminalize librarians and teachers in addition to being 50th in pay in Missouri. And so if we want to be competitive in this country, in this world, if we want to make sure that our kids are okay, then we need to start funding education in a much greater way.
Karen?
Thank you. I am not for this bill, not for this amendment, I should say, because I actually worry about the mental state of people. I was in the area in Kansas years back where they were making the casino legal, and the first place they did was go to the schools and say, hey, we're going to fund the schools and let's put in these casinos. And in that area, I know that businesses failed, the people lost their homes, people lost their cars because of gambling. And so I'm not really for making gambling. I feel like it's the poor people, and this was not a really rich area. You know, they're looking for the money. Sometimes they're desperate and they tend to get themselves in situations. So I'm looking at it a little differently. As far as funding education, I totally agree with Wick. I think we need to do it, but we need to find a different way to do it. So I'm going to be against this amendment.
Okay, Michael.
Yes, the way that we fund our education is strictly by having Missouri, who sits on with the supermajority sitting on millions of dollars. You know, sometimes over $50 million is left over in our budget, so we could fully, most definitely fund our public school system and that education system with this being an amendment that's on the ballot with up to 28.9 million in yearly tax revenue and funding for public schools. What gets me is the "and" part. Normally when there's "and" on there, that allows me to know that that is ballot candy and that there's no opportunity at this point for it to be a piece of clean legislation, which the supermajority could make sure that we have. But this type of piece of legislation needs to be thrown in the laundry, if not thrown away, and made sure that we quit having people play with us when it comes to our school system. It's been far too long that we watched this happen so many times where there's something that's being promised at the end and then the rug is swept from underneath people's feet with a weak promise. And this most definitely needs to go back. And even though there are good benefits to this that I can't see, but as far as the education part, that's the part that concerns me. That's where I'm on the fence with that because I'm not on the fence with it. I just don't understand how we continue to sit on so much money after we have finished up our budget in May, and yet we still can't fix a problem that is so easy to fix if our people would just allow it to happen here in the state of Missouri. They can fund it.
Claudia, please.
Well, first of all, I like what Michael had to say. Secondly, I have problems with both amendments 2 and 5. 5 is about gambling on the Osage River. It's short, which I think is important. It's only about a half a page. But I don't understand why gambling is in the Constitution at all. The Constitution is supposed to be how the government works. It's not supposed to be about how you grow and sell marijuana and where and when you're going to allow gambling. Those things should be in the statutes, not in the Constitution. The one on the sports gambling is 8 pages. It's just too much for people. They're not going to read it. And then they're going to vote on it not knowing what it's about. That's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. Our next question. We live in a changing world. Which K to 12 education subjects should reflect those changes and how?
Oh.
Okay, Karen?
Yeah, you had to choose me. I'm the teacher.
Yeah.
That is a difficult question because of different areas. I really think that a lot of things, except for the core, should be left up to communities of what they should teach. And so different communities would teach different things because of the who's in the schools. And sure, you should know what everybody's doing, you know, in the past, the ancestry, how the country grew up, all this kind of history and things like that. But I just want to see them reading, writing, and have the basic life skills and not to have so much other things that are taken away from the children so that they're not learning those skills. I've been in schools amazed at how children can't even add because we're pushing and pushing all of these different things and they don't have time to learn the basics. And you need to know your multiplication, you need to know your addition, you need to know how to read. And these children are lacking in that. And I just don't want to put anything more on them. I just want to go back to the basics and make sure they know how to do those things so they can survive in life no matter what they choose for their educational future.
Okay, Emily.
Yes. So I would say that, you know, I'm not a public school teacher. We need to leave that up to our teachers and we have a school board. You know, those are the ones who are set in place to kind of help with those. And I would advise to leave it to them to decide. And you know, elections matter, even school board elections matter. And so making sure that we elect the right people in there as well to make sure that they have the opportunity to make sure that our kids are learning what they need to be learning.
Yes.
Okay, Claudia.
Well, I like what Karen had to say to start with. In all of these things, I will represent my district. And if my district members tell me that they disagree with me, I'm not taking this job to represent myself. I'm taking it to represent them.
Yes.
Now, having said that, yes, back to basics. They need the basics. As a scientist, I can tell you how important math and science are, and how little science I got in junior high and high school. But what little I did get really inspired me to go on. I was afraid when I got to college that I was not going to be able to handle the sciences, so I just didn't go into science. And it wasn't until I was 2 years in college that I switched because I wasn't happy with my major and I really wanted to be a scientist. And it was very difficult to make it up at that point. So I want to make sure that today's children get the education that they need to compete in the world and to do what they would like to do to fulfill their dreams.
Yeah.
Okay, Wick.
Yeah, love this question. Currently an academic librarian, previously a public librarian. So think about this a lot, especially right now as I'm studying information science and basically how information diffuses through societies, and pursued that specifically for this role because I think it's probably the most important thing facing Missouri at this point. I think the obviously like focus on STEM is wonderful. I think that that's great. I think in that we need to not discount the arts though, because without those creative thought processes, the STEM doesn't go as far, right? I think that again, all of these questions kind of hinge on Missouri being able to attract teachers, and with being 50th in pay, criminalizing teachers and librarians, banning books, we are not going to attract teachers. And so, you know, what we're teaching Again, I echo, we should not be teaching the test. We should be allowing teachers to have more creative control. But if we can't keep teachers because we are treating them so poorly, we are demonizing them in the media. The Republicans continue to pass legislation that literally there is a law introduced that would put them on the sex offender registry for using a student's preferred name. That is terrible. What teacher would want to teach in that environment? So I think if we we have to fix some of the baseline problems of how our legislature treats teachers to get to those issues.
Okay, Yolanda?
Yes, can you repeat your question again, please?
We live in a changing world. Which K to 12 education subjects should reflect those changes and how?
Okay. I am of the mindset that there are some basic and fundamental courses or lessons, teachings, and disciplines that every child should have: reading, writing, and arithmetic. I have worked many years in my neighborhood with children in after-school programs, and so many of those children who have been passed from elementary to junior high school did not have the basics of reading. Some eighth graders had the reading level of a fourth or fifth grader, and it's very unfortunate. But those basics, that's the foundation from which everything else is built. I do think it's important in our fast-paced moving world, when we talk about 21st century skills, digital literacy is important. If they're not adept at this type of learning, they're going to get left behind. Ask me, I am a senior now, and and sometimes the digital literacy can be pretty daunting. Critical thinking is important. Home economics. Everybody needs to know how to survive, and home economics is a lot of times where you get those basic survival skills.
Hey, Michael?
I totally agree with Yolanda as well. I think that those basic learning skills, reading, writing, arithmetic, are very important. Also, something that Kirk had mentioned as well, Wick had mentioned, is the fact that we need to not only just look at test scores, teachers need the opportunity to also measure growth with our students as well. And it's kind of hard going into the 21st century without realizing that AI isn't going anywhere. So innovation in technology is being heightened on a daily basis. And with these things being a part of our now and our future, I think it's very important that teachers have access to be able to broaden a child's horizons to match where we are today. And I think that it's very disrespectful of the state of Missouri with an opportunity like we have right now to be in the top 5 in technology in the country and have almost the lowest teachers pay in the country. I mean, it's just it's a contradiction upon itself. So I think that, of course, we have a lot of work to be that we need to continue to fight for. And also, as Yolanda spoke, the home ec skills are a necessity because we're missing those, and as well as teaching our children soft skills inside of the school as well.
Okay, next question. Missouri has the 5th highest gun death rate in the country, according to a recent article in Kansas City Star. More than half of these deaths are suicides. As a member of the legislature, what gun laws would you support? Michael?
I would support gun laws that make sure that every individual has a background check, regardless if they're, even down to purchasing of bullets. I would also make sure that we would get back to a mandatory carry and conceal. We wouldn't just be running reckless on the street like quote unquote cowboys, uh, there would be stricter penalties if these laws weren't followed out. So I think that it's so important that we understand that public safety needs to be one of the first things that we work on each year in the side of the state capitol, because there's no way that we can fix this if we don't band together. And that's all municipalities, the county, the state, as well as the city, along with the police department. And if, we had an opportunity to relinquish control from the state control of our police departments. And just like we mentioned earlier about the IP, we should have that same opportunity for our people to have a voice and to be able to have signatures that allow us to have it on the ballot as an amendment to get our control back, local control. So we would most definitely have more stricter laws, but we would also make sure that each process of ownership of a gun would go through severe background checks.
Yolanda?
I believe that what Michael is referring to is gun laws that just make good old common sense. That's the term that my people use from the South, good old common sense. And there have been so many common sense bills from the Democratic side that's been introduced over the years. They're doable and they could get enacted rather quickly, which works toward reducing those gun debts. But unfortunately, when they come up, the majority party typically stonewalls the opportunity for them to get through the process. I'm thinking about last year, and I believe it was last year, we had a measure that would ban minors from openly carrying firearms on public land without supervision. And all but one of our Republican colleagues voted it down. I just beyond me, but I would vote in support of a ban like that one. There are bills that I sponsored and either co-sponsored that I would support again. One that, and I think Michael mentioned a few of those, requires a license to sell ammunition, universal background checks before a person buys a gun from an unlicensed firearms dealer. One that prohibits someone under 20 years of age to purchase semi-automatic or automatic firearms. Many, many more. Again, the Democrats have put across a lot of bills that typically get stonewalled. But if we focus on some of these bills, I think we will see some changes in gun debts.
Okay, Karen. Karen? Can't hear you, you're muted.
No, anyways, okay. I've been talking to legislators and about the process, and just what Yolanda was saying about how come some of these bills don't get passed when they're like common sense. And they were saying about how many of these kind of bills people tack on other things that they didn't like. And they can't honor these bills because of all the extra things that people tack on. And so when you vote in favor of the thing you like, then you have to, things you didn't like, you have to accept too. And so they're voted down. I would like to see in Jefferson City more single bills that were just what the item says it is without anything attached to it. And maybe we could get some of these common sense bills through that you're talking about. And I know that there's other bills that have been placed besides just the gun laws. As far as what I think, I do agree with everybody. I just would like to make sure that background checks are really done well. I wouldn't want to change anything else with our gun laws in Missouri, but make that more strict because people are falling through the holes. I don't know how we're going to do that when you can go online and buy the parts and build your own gun. But at least maybe that would deter some people from being able to have a gun that shouldn't have it.
Okay, Claudia.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. This is Amendment 2 of the U.S. Constitution. I am not for shredding the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now, having said that, we do have a problem that a lot of people are committing suicide. I think that they will find another way if they want to commit suicide and they don't have a gun. Drugs is one good way to, or I shouldn't say good way, but it's an effective way. And nowadays they can get so much fentanyl that it's so easily that I don't even know why they're bothering with the gun, frankly. Also, we have the problem that people come into this country illegally. They break the law just in entering the country. And what do they care whether there is a law against them having a gun or not? If we give up guns for citizens and not allow us to be able to protect ourselves when the police can't come and we've already defunded the police, then what we're going to have is that we will be ruled by the illegal aliens.
Okay. Emily?
Okay. All right. In rural Missouri, suicide deaths have gone up. We'll just stick to the question. I've talked to FFA, Future Farmers of America. They're about rural Missouri where uncles and grandfathers are dying by suicide. More men will die by firearms. If we had a red flag law in place, that would be one way of dealing with this and provide them the time to get the mental health care that they desperately need, and we could save them. I've filed multiple bills that are common sense gun laws here as your representative. One is simply requiring that you file a report within 72 hours of noticing a firearm missing or stolen. That's it. That's so controversial with the other side. The Democrats, after the mass shooting here in District 24 at Union Station at our Super Bowl parade, filed an HJR that upon voter approval, the resolution would amend the Constitution to allow any county, the city of St. Louis, and the city of Kansas City to regulate the possession, carrying, or transfer of firearms within our city or county limits. Let the municipalities decide. Instead, we hear legislation about tax-free ammunition, guns everywhere in churches, public transportation, daycares, and schools. I wish and plead that we could have a conversation about guns in the General Assembly. I stand for our Second Amendment rights. I've been a gun owner. I grew up in rural Kansas, and my senior class in high school was the last class to bring firearms and vehicles during hunting season. But we have an issue with firearms, and we have to do something about it.
And Wick?
Yeah, so also from rural Missouri, also grew up around guns, but also have one of the family members that we're talking about. I actually have a grandparent who did kill themselves by gun in suicide. So this is something I've thought about since I was a child. I think that the problem with this issue is that there is so much money from gun lobby, right? That it creates a media effect in which there is one side or another side. So they're taking all of our guns or everyone gets all the guns. That's not the case. And again, these common sense, I am a gun sense candidate, these common sense laws should be able to be passed. I've heard people talk about the reasons that the Republican supermajority won't entertain these laws, but it's a Republican supermajority. If they wanted to, they could very easily. So we need to be working on these things. Like these are obvious things, background checks, removing loopholes, red flag laws, not allowing minors to be on public land. These are all obvious things that I think the majority of Missourians would agree with. But it is presented always as this diametric issue where it's one or the other. It's not that. Everyone I've talked to, I feel like, gun owner or not, believes that obviously there is a middle ground in which that we can find compromise on this issue and it will prevent death.
Okay. There are 6 ballot measures on the November 5th ballot. Two are constitutional amendments sponsored by the legislature. The next two questions concern these amendments. Question is, Amendment 6 would impose a $3 fee in every circuit court criminal case, which would go towards funding retirement benefits for sheriffs and other court personnel. In 2021, the Supreme Court rejected this approach as unconstitutional, saying that those fees are not reasonably related to the administration of justice. What is your position on Amendment 6? Yolanda? Yolanda?
I'm sorry.
Ah,
I'm sorry. This is another instance where the legislature has forced an initiative on the ballot after the Supreme Court ruled against it. And I agree with their ruling. I'm in favor of, obviously, of these elected officials receiving their retirements, but collecting fees and fines, that's like a regressive tax. It takes a large portion or a large percentage of income from low income households. And a lot of times people of color. Doesn't appear to be the right method to me, because we need a consistent funding source that aligns itself with the Constitution.
okay, Emily?
Yeah, so the Supreme Court ruled it being unconstitutional. So I think it's important that we are supporting our law enforcement. They are underfunded. However, this amendment is incredibly dangerous because it sets up a system where arresting more people could provide a financial benefit to law enforcement. We don't want to incentivize more arrests in order to fund their salaries. We need to fund their retirements, retain sheriffs, and get them more resources that they need, but we need to do it in a way that's constitutional.
Michael? Michael?
I'm sorry. I do believe that it is unconstitutional, and I do agree with Emily, and I also agree with Yolanda as well, because if the Supreme Court deemed it that way, then that's the way that it should stand. And also, how is it that that they are willing to want to expand fees, but they're not expanding any services? And it will be a demographic hurdle for those that are minorities, but you won't be able to see that because once again, there's ballot. They use this as an opportunity. To throw in little extra pieces of ballot candy. And there's no way that I would be supporting Amendment 6.
Karen? Karen?
I thought we were being unmuted by somebody else, sorry. I agree. I think Amendment 6 was a waste of paper. I don't even know what was on there, so I agree with everybody that it was silly. So yeah, against it.
Wick?
Yeah, no, I mean it seems like a clear conflict of interest in addition to it being unconstitutional. So I think the added court fees will affect the people who need those added fees to not exist the most. There's a legal obligation to fund these pensions and these programs for public servants, and the Missouri Assembly needs to do that through a constitutional means.
Okay. The next question. Amendment 7, also proposed by the legislature, is a two-parter. It would forbid ranked choice voting, which is essentially a means of having an instant runoff in elections in which there are multiple candidates. It also states that only U.S. citizens would be allowed to vote, which is already the law in every state, including Missouri. What's your position on Amendment 7, Karen?
I have to vote yes on, I would vote yes on Amendment 7. I'm not for rank of voting at all. I'm not for changing anything. We already have this. We don't have ranked voting. So it's another thing that I don't know why it was on there, but I do support it. I'm just going to say yes.
Wick? Wick?
Yep, sorry, I was muted. No, I very much oppose this. I think that it's another example of the supermajority Republican legislature in Missouri preemptively banning something that people might want in the future. So again, as people have talked about earlier in the night, once there is a constitutional amendment, it is harder to change, to remove. This is, again, a preemptive ban that the Missouri legislature is enacting, I feel like, because there is more discussion of ranked choice voting. So I feel like it's another example of the Missouri legislature actively working against the will of the people, and actively making it harder for the people to be involved in the democratic process in the way that I see a functional democracy working.
Yolanda?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that first, both Missouri and the United States Constitution already states that it's illegal for non-citizens to vote. So with that being said, it's a federal crime, but it's also a crime under Missouri's law and every other state law. I think in general, I'm a proponent of ranked choice voting, but I don't believe implementation of it is probably good at this time.
Michael?
Yes. Yeah, the Repubs, I agree with the last two speakers that the Repubs are just making an attempt to work against the will of the people of Missouri. And it's like it's already been stated several times, it's already a federal and a Missouri law. And so there is no need to attempt to mess with this. And once again, I just think that they're using this opportunity to make it harder once something is placed into the Constitution. It is very difficult to have it removed. So this is just another ploy at them trying to do exactly that.
Emily?
Yeah. So, like you said, this didn't get here by signature gathering. It was put here by the General Assembly, the Republican supermajority. This is what they did. So I don't have a strong stance for or against ranked choice voting, but this shouldn't be banned in our Constitution. It is already a federal and state law that you cannot vote if you're not a U.S. citizen. This is to address a problem that literally does not exist. Amendments could instead weaken the voting rights of Missouri citizens. The language about citizenship is ballot candy, was added solely to trick voters into supporting an amendment that outlaws ranked choice voting.
Why do you support or oppose Proposition A, which would guarantee paid sick leave and a gradual raise of the minimum wage to $15 from the Missouri current minimum wage of $12.30? Michael?
Well, I think that once again, this is something that my side we've been pushing for. So I think we're going to continue to push for it, and it's still not enough. $15 is still, it's not where we want to see it, and of course, it still needs more work. So we're going to continue that fight. Also, that the sick leave. I mean, anytime that you have an opportunity to provide your employees with better sick leave, it gives them more opportunities to say, hey, My job cares about me, and in return, I'll show up. It's not something that I'll take advantage of. I think that I think that these opportunities that we have to show any type of empathy where there has been none for decades and decades of showing where workers are willing to show up, but they aren't getting any type of extra benefits in return. And what I mean by benefits right now is the fact that sick leave is important. A lot of times people think of sick leave as just an opportunity that doctors will look at you from the shoulders or the neck down. And sometimes that sick leave could be for mental health. I have pieces of legislation that say that workers should receive mental health days off as well. So this is imperative, and I think that it's needed. I would be a yes on this proposition.
Dr. Williams, you're muted.
Claudia,
Do you want me to talk about this one or the previous one?
okay. Both?
Okay. Well, on Amendment 7, first of all, when I read the Constitution, I did not see where it said only citizens vote. And it is a problem in other states that they are allowing non-citizens to vote. Maryland, New York, and California, and I think they're trying to do it in Arizona. I'm not sure if the Supreme Court in Arizona shot it down, but I think it was Arizona, maybe it was Wisconsin, where the Secretary of State was trying to insert it into the voting structure. As for ranked choice voting, this is real easy on the side of the voter, but when it gets to the counting, it becomes an issue that promotes fraud. And at this time, with so much of a problem with that, I don't think we should add anything more to it. Now, on the issue of Prop A and the minimum wage, this is a trick. This is a trick question. So I get an extra 2 minutes, right?
Yes, she should get an extra 2 minutes or an
No.
extra 90 seconds.
What happens is the employers, they can't afford all the wages and the benefits, so they just hire a bunch of illegal aliens. I've seen this time and time again, and they hire people who are not skilled. Oftentimes they hire people to clean houses and to build buildings, people who have grown up in a lean-to with a dirt floor. It just makes no sense, but they do it because they can't afford the going wage for American workers. So it actually works against the people. I would very much like to see that Americans have a good living wage and that they have benefits. I think those are very important, and I'm sad that we have lost those to a great extent. But if we pass this at this time, I think it will do us great damage, and we won't know until it's too late.
Emily.
Okay, so I'll stick to the topic. It's important to me that all Missourians have a living wage. Missourians currently, like you said, minimum wage is $12.30 an hour, which is about $25,000-ish for a full-time employee. It's not enough to live on. We also just lived through a global pandemic, and we know that everyone gets sick. So it's better for both individuals and businesses if people have the ability to stay home when they are ill. The Proposition A would set reasonable limits on sick leave accrual and doesn't force companies to pay out for unused sick time when a worker leaves for any reason. So it doesn't place unreasonable financial burdens on employers.
Wick,
So I very much believe that the minimum wage should be increased. I think that anyone working full time in this country, that's the point of the minimum wage, right? Should be able to afford their lives. And that is not the current system that we have set up. That is an unreasonable and unsustainable system. If that someone can spend their entire working day, their entire week, 40 hours a week at least, because a lot of people are working much more than that and still not be able to afford healthcare, to be able to afford housing, because housing costs have gone up astronomically and wages have not increased at that same rate. That is not a society that is sustainable. The whole point of the minimum wage is that you can afford to live and hopefully live comfortably, and $15 an hour isn't even going to do that anymore. So I think the idea that the Missouri legislature wouldn't support at least I mean, we have to be able to support at least what 1 week of sick days. Who is against that? Who would be against that? So I think the idea that, yeah, no, I'm fully in support of raising the minimum wage and requiring sick days. I don't think that that should really be a question. I've worked at plenty of jobs from rural poverty in which I was expected to come into work even if I'm sick, and that is something that not only has a effect on you as an individual, but also a monetary effect, an economic effect, in the amount of people that are exposed to that. So yes.
Karen,
Thank you. I have to be opposed to this amendment because my constituency has a lot of small businesses. And I think the businesses themselves have to, they're not making like millions of dollars. They're not rich. They're all small businesses striving. Even downtown, I have that downtown area. Then I have all of that Hispanic area over there in the center part. And even I'm by Royal Stadium, and we're all middle class people over here. And any businesses they're having trouble. And I think to impose mandatory wage increases is going to be hard on them. So, I understand what you all have said, and I don't disagree with it. If I was just looking at the main population, but I have to look at my small businesses too, and to help them. So I'm going to have to go no with this amendment.
Yolanda,
Well, I'll have to say yes to this one. And, hats off to the citizens who were able to get this onto the ballot. I think speaks volumes and their concerns about wages. Workers deserve to be paid at least a minimum wage and ideally a livable wage, adjusted for inflation. And most of us will at some time or another get sick. And it's an extreme burden on a worker who gets sick and cannot be paid for the few days that they have to take off work. You still have your bills, you still have to eat. So the ability to take off when they're sick and still get paid, I am in support of that.
to all, do you support Amendment 3, the Right to Reproductive Freedom Initiative? Will you commit to upholding the will of the voters if it passes? Karen,
Amendment 3 is not just about abortion. That's the problem. It's very extreme. It pushes the abortion clear up to 9 months, which I pretty much think that most people know that they don't want a baby before 9 months. So I don't get why that's even on there. It also has a little thing that says that minors don't have to have parental permission. And it's, that's being a parent of a child who did get an abortion. she was 18 at the time. I know how they feel. And even myself, I was in 1973 and just was in college, and my husband and I were thinking about an abortion, and oh my gosh, I have a 6'4" son because I chose not to do that. And so I just have to say no because of my life and my experiences, and I surely wouldn't want to be a parent having that situation. And I think there's even some open door for um, this gender identity changes and transitional changes, and I definitely am not for that. No.
Yolanda.
Well, to answer your question, will I commit to the will of the voters if it passes? Yes. The current law has had, I believe, more negative impact than the previous one. So most of the people, if not all, the people I've spoken with feels that the law needs to be restored so that the women in our state and their families and their healthcare providers can make their own choices about what happens to their bodies.
Wick.
That's simple for me.
Okay. Wick.
Yeah, it's also simple for me. Yes, I support this entirely. My campaign helped with the initiative petition. We gathered hundreds of signatures, or 130 signatures for the initiative petition. So completely in support of people having the right to choose. I want to go back to some things that my opponent said, though, that it is only legalizing abortion until fetal viability, and also that the concept that it's opening the door for gender change somehow, like that is just a ridiculous statement that has no bearing in the law that's been proposed. So there are too many possibilities for too many nuanced situations for the Missouri legislature to do this, to ban this outright for all reasons. It's historically in the United States, it's been a common practice, and I will continue to, I obviously will work within whatever passes. I think the majority of people also understand that that access to abortion is incredibly important, and so I am not worried about that piece of it. I'm going to continue to work for that, and if for whatever reason abortion stays banned in Missouri, I will obviously support my constituency while continuing to work to make sure that abortion access is possible.
Emily.
So before I was an elected official, I volunteered my time with Planned Parenthood as a patient escort. Some of my main priorities as an elected official has been regaining reproductive rights back. And I'm supporting Amendment 3. We've heard about too many people literally almost bleeding out in hospital parking lots because of how our law is written right now. Doctors don't know when they can assist in a medical emergency. When it passes, because this amendment will pass, my Republican colleagues inevitably will try to overturn the will of the voters. They will also continue the attacks of birth control and IVF. So you can count on me and so many other Democrats to continue being a loud voice to stand up for your reproductive rights and your choice in Jefferson City.
Claudia.
Well, this is a very important issue for me and a very important amendment. Unfortunately, I cannot support it, even though the reason that I am running has to do with this issue. As a neurobiologist, I feel that I can forge a negotiation between the left and the right on the issue of abortion, and I would do it on the basis of onset of sentiency. This bill, this constitutional amendment has the wording in two different places in sections 4 and 8, 1. It says fetal viability. And this is a trick. This is a trick against the people on the left. Imagine if you understand the meaning of test tube baby, you understand that viability can be pushed back all the way to conception. So what will happen is that we will end up in the courts time and time and time again, every time they push back viability. And it's going to create legal chaos. What I prefer to do is draft new legislation. We get it through the legislature, and then make a constitutional amendment for it, which I hope at some point goes national.
Michael?
I most definitely stand behind this, and most definitely I'm a yes. And I'll always stand behind women having a choice and a right over their own bodies. I have two daughters. God forbid if something were to happen to one or both of them, and they went through a situation to where is unwillingly they became impregnated, I would most definitely want them to have a choice on whether or not if they wanted to be able to keep that child or not. So it's a simple yes for me. And you have people that will go through situations that are very traumatizing, where a young lady and it's not even just the fact of being impregnated. She could be in a sexual abduction and left with STDs, anything of that nature. For people to be able to have a place to go when they have nowhere else to go, if they can't afford, if there's no affordability there, if there's no insurance there. But the good thing is, they work, and if it is a family with insurance, they can still have an opportunity to go there. And not only that, families should have a right to be able to go to Planned Parenthood, and also men. I think that a lot of times they're left out of that equation, and they have the right to be able to use those facilities as well. So, if we weren't able to get this through, which I know we will, I would also advocate for my constituents to go wherever they need to be able to go to obtain the services that they have always been able to be provided, to make sure that they'll be able to have that happen, even if it's not in our state right here in Missouri.
Before we get to our 2-minute closing statements, here's the last question for me. What is one question you wish I'd asked, and how would you answer it? Claudia.
Why are you running? And I would say that I am running for state representative for two reasons. One, I recognize that my opponent is not there to represent the citizens of Kansas City. She's there to represent foreign nationals, the foreign born. She said so, and she said so in front of former city councilman Jim Glover. She kicked me out of her office twice because I said, I think we've had enough immigration at this point. I think we can all agree on that. 100 million immigrants in 35 years is way too many. We started out in 1990 with only 250 million people in this country. We've added 100 million to that in just 35 years. It's outrageous. The second reason I'm running is because I'm a neurobiologist, and I want to forge a negotiation between the left and the right on the issue of abortion. Onset of sentiency doesn't happen until 21 weeks. And that gives women plenty of time. It's in the 6th month to take care of any problems that they have.
Emily.
Yeah. So I love this question. Won't address all of that, what was just said. So the question that I would love for you to ask is, give us an example of how you work across the aisle on legislation. My first year was during the pandemic. And I had to make a simple HR complaint against a Republican who continued to say China virus on the floor and in committees when talking about COVID. He described himself as someone who is the farthest right, so I didn't think we could have a conversation. We needed him to stop because rhetoric like that hurts communities that look like me. A week after I made the complaint, the Atlanta shootings happened and I received death threats. This is the people's house and you shouldn't feel threatened. Fast forward to a year later, I had to work with that same rep to pass my bill that got sent to his committee that he was chair of. We worked together and he helped me pass it. Fast forward to last session, that same rep filed a similar bill that I've been filing. It's a good bipartisan bill. And I worked with him and we openly talked about it on the floor on why this would be good for Missouri. Being a public servant is not about us. It's about your constituents, your district, and your state.
Yolanda?
Well, I think, Madam Moderator, you've done such a wonderful job. You asked a wide variety of questions, and I can't think of anything that I think you should have asked me. I think you did a good job.
No, thank you. They gave you the questions. Michael?
I follow the sentiments of Yolanda, Madam Moderator, and also my question that I would have had you ask would be why, or no, excuse me, for what reason do you do this job? And my reply and answer would be for the love of my constituents, for the love of Missouri. It all starts with love. If it's campaign based, if it's a day at the State House, it's all done with love. Because believe me, or entrust in me that we don't do it for the pay. We do it because, and I know that I do most definitely do it because I love serving people. I love serving the people of Missouri. I would do this job for free, and I won't be outworked doing it. And I'm always willing to be engaged and always willing to learn. And even those processes are something that I do with love. I love engaging people, being able to be engaged by people, and I love learning. So those are the main reasons why I do what I do. And so that would be my answer.
And Karen?
My question that I wish you had asked is similar to Michael's, is that why I am running for this district to be the legislator, representative in Jefferson City. And the reason I am running is because one reason is the democratic process, is that I think this is why I'm not for rank voting, is because I think that you should always have two parties, at least representative, if not three, and to give the people a choice so that people feel like that they are part of the process. And in rank voting, that kind of a thing. In some districts, you wouldn't even be having a Democratic candidate because the majority of the people in that county would be Republicans. So that would knock out any two-party representation in the general election. So in my case, in my district, I probably wouldn't have the opportunity to be in the general election either because it has a lot of Democratic voters. And so I just think that we should all have a voice, and that's why I chose to run.
And Wick?
Yeah, no, so I've really appreciated the questions tonight. Thoughtfully constructed. I think that one of the current topics that I love talking about, but would have loved to hear everyone's opinion on is support of public libraries, and whether or not you support public libraries, because That should not be a controversial question. That should be such an easy question to answer. And unfortunately, in Missouri legislature right now, it's not, because there are a lot of people creating a lot of laws that are actively harming not only teachers, but also librarians. Library funding is threatened to be cut all of the time. And if we want to, a lot of people talked about creativity in classrooms, allowing teacher control. If we want that to be able to happen, we have to have a support system for that, and that's the library. It's where you can have self-guided research, where you can learn about what you want. And this idea that I should be able to control what other people are reading is ridiculous and an affront to democracy. In the school libraries, parents have always had the option of asking what their students are reading. So this pretend controversy that the Republican supermajority has created in Missouri is harmful to education. It's harmful to youth who need a place to go. It's harmful to families, and it is not the Missouri legislature's role to be able to dictate what your child can read.
Okay, candidates, it's time for your 2-minute closing remarks. I want to personally thank each of you for joining us. It was hard not to shake my head or either direction. It's great information. And in addition, we'd like to ask that you share the League's website with voters and encourage all citizens to show up on each election day and exercise their right to vote. Now for our candidates' closing remarks. Claudia.
Well, I just want to say that I think it's most important that we do the abortion legislation correctly, and details matter, particularly when we're talking about biological functions and healthcare. It's so easy to get caught up in details that you don't realize. If you don't have the biological training, the things I hear all the time are, people just don't realize that I think that we're very complicated. People are complicated. Life is complicated, and everybody recognizes that, but then there are particular issues where they don't understand it, and nobody knows everything. On this issue, this is one that I have studied for many, many years and thought about really for decades, frankly. And it's something that I feel that I can do and that I must do. And being the only neurobiologist in the Republican Party, I expect the Republicans to turn to me and to listen to me. And I think that they will listen to me in a way that they won't listen to a Democrat. So so it's important that I try to do the work for us. And that we get it straight and we get it right. If my constituency will vote for me and send me to Jefferson City, entrust me with their votes and their considerations, I will do my best to do everything to the best of my ability. And I thank you for your consideration, and I do request your vote.
Karen.
I want to thank you guys for having us on and taking the time to promote our values and giving us the opportunity to speak to our constituency. I'm thankful for that. Being involved in education for 35 years, I am concerned about the future generations, and I want to work to provide a promising future for the children and the young people here in my district, as well as my own children. And I am interested in promoting the American values that we find in our national and state constitutions. And in Missouri, we need to protect the rights of our state and make sure that what happens in the rest of the nation is that we can benefit, and or if not, that we can have a voice even in the national arena. And I want the excellence in education and aid in the creation of economic growth and prosperity for my district and all Missourians, actually. And I want to restrict foreign investors, a cap property tax, and taxpayers should not be forced to fund anything that is against their religious convictions. And only law-abiding citizens should be allowed to vote and make decisions for our state, which we discussed tonight. And I'm concerned about the future of our generations, and I want to work to help them. And I'm looking forward to being the voice of District number 19 in Jefferson City and to represent my constituents. Thank you very much.
Michael?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this platform and giving me an opportunity to speak. I think that you all rock. And also as a veteran, as a minority business owner, and also as a father and a grandfather, I feel that I want to go back to Jefferson City, and I would like for my constituents to make sure that that happens, because I'm sure that the majority of my constituents know that I want a better Missouri. I want better women rights and better choices, better jobs, better schools, better attainable housing, better vocational training, better connections between rural and urban Missouri, better economic development, better landlords, better land banks, better hospitals, better unhoused resources, better mental health facilities and resources, better roads, a better police force, better voters, better civility, a better us. And by sending me back to Jefferson City, I'll continue that fight to make sure that these things are happening for the betterment of all Missourians. And I'll end with this, Madam Moderator, that I love these opportunities on these type of platforms, because at the end of the day, I think that sometimes we have too many Democrats and too many Republicans and not enough Americans.
Amen.
Thank you.
Emily?
Yeah. So thank you to the League of Women Voters. Again, I'm Emily Weber, and like I said, I've been serving District 24 for 2 terms and running for my 3rd. I've been working in our community for years, and I ran because I have similar lived experiences as many of my constituents. I serve my constituents regardless of their political views. I'm here to help everyone. I've been able to pass legislation that is bipartisan by working across the aisle. I'm committed to working with Republicans to get things done, but I'm also quick to speak up when extremist legislators attempt to strip Missourians of their rights. When I go back to Jefferson City, I'll continue to work on my priorities that my constituents want, legislation that we've been pushing. You can find more about my legislation that I filed by going to the house.mo.gov. You can also contact me by going to my website at emilyformissouri.com. There's my social media, email, and phone. I love hearing from my constituents and helping them. I am so proud and honored that I can serve District 24, and I would say this is the best district in the state of Missouri. I want to thank my opponent, Claudia, for participating in this, but I think the difference between me and my opponent is very clear. I did kick her out of my office, and it is for yelling in my face multiple times about my immigration status. Just
No,
because
that
I
is
kicked
not
her out of
true.
my
I did
office
not yell in her face.
does not mean that I'm not going to assist her if she needs any assistance. Our office is still here to help. I don't know that there's ever been a more important time for you to show up and vote, not just top of the ticket, but down ballot. Don't forget all of the amendments. I'm asking you to make a plan to vote, and I hope I can earn your vote again in November. Thanks.
Yolanda?
Well, Madam Moderator, thank you. And thank you to members of the league. This is great to be able to participate in this forum. And I know I'm going to go out on a limb and say all of the candidates here tonight, thank you not only for creating this forum, but for all the things you do to educate the general public and your members and voters on political issues. As many of us know, we do have a lot at stake this election year. Well, quite frankly, we have a lot at stake every year. Our rights as citizens and humans are being challenged at every level of government. And this isn't the time to sit out, because sitting out is really a vote in favor of risking loss of our voice in this whole democratic process and risking some of the freedoms we've always been able to enjoy. I think it's been said already, really, and I'm going to say it my way. If we can rally around the issues, forget about our political agendas for once, and rally around some issues, we can get a lot done for the state of Missouri. And I hope that is what we intend to do in 2025. That is what I intend to do. So if you want to learn more, and those of you who are listening, the listeners right now who are listening, and those who will be listening later, if you want to learn more about my policy platform, you can visit my website at yolandayoungmorep.com. I certainly appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now I'm going to turn things back over to Anitra.
I'm sorry, I don't think Wick has had a chance to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Wick, did I skip you?
It's all good.
Well,
Yeah.
I have you as number 3, so I meant to get to you third. Sorry.
No, you're good. I echo everyone. Thank you so much for putting this on. The League of Women Voters does amazing work, not just with these forums, but it's one of the best places I feel like to find information on the political process, what's going on. So thank you all for doing this and inviting me. I often think a lot about the Missouri state motto, Salus Populi Suprema Lex Esto, which the welfare of the people is the highest law. And I don't feel our legislature has honored that state motto. I am really proud that our campaign team has reflected the diversity of this district. I am in love with this district. I have spent my entire adult life working or living in this district. And I hope that our campaign has shown who I am. I think we had a lot of conversations, my campaign team, because we had a really amazing all-volunteer campaign team that worked on this, the majority of who live in the district. And we distributed free books to youth. We gave out native seeds. We had story times. We did youth voter registration rock concerts from a young band in the district. We did some really creative things, and that's what I'd like to continue doing, creative ways to get people involved in the democratic process in our district. I think I have a unique insight in that I am from rural Missouri. I am from a town of 900 people. I am able to talk across the aisle. I am able to talk to people who I disagree with. I attempt to assume good intent in any conversation, even if we vehemently disagree, and even if they're using my community as a scapegoat for bad legislation. I think we need to be fixing core owners. Or core issues. I'm a business owner in the district. I am a librarian, and I am very much looking forward to representing District 19 in Jefferson City. I will put in the work, and I will be active and available to the community.
Now, thank you all of you candidates. Now I'm going to turn it over to Anitra.
Thank you, candidates. And thank you, audience, for your interest in the November 5th election. A recording of this forum will be available on the League's website, lwvkc.org, and on our YouTube channel. Please take a moment to share our forums via your Facebook, Nextdoor, and other social media channels. And remember, for voter and candidate information, visit lwvkc.org and vote411.org. Thank you and good night.
No.
Good night.
Good night.